Welcome back to my channel. I hope you are all doing great. Today we are going to develop a small Spring Boot backend application where our main motto is to perform the CRUD operations. Generally, what are CRUD operations? CRUD operations are nothing but performing the create, read, update and delete operations against the DB. Let's see what we are going to develop actually. We are going to develop a small employee management system kind of application, where our main aim is to perform the CRUD operations. So this employee going to hold different attributes, I mean to say properties. One is ID, it's a unique identifier to identify each employee, and then name, and then salary, and then address. Okay, here we are going to create four APIs. We are going to create four APIs to perform these CRUD operations. The first is post. This API's main aim is to create a new employee, create a new EMP in short, and then get. The main aim of this get operation is to retrieve an employee details, retrieve an EMP details, and then we are going to perform the put. The main aim of this is to update existing employee details, update existing EMP details, and finally we are going to perform delete. Delete is nothing but delete an employee, delete an EMP. I hope you got purpose of these four APIs, and we are going to use the H2 database, H2 DB. H2 is a open source lightweight embedded database which comes with our Spring Boot application, and we are going to use the same thing to perform these four CRUD operations. Assume we have a database something like this, and there is a table called employee, and we are going to perform this post, get, put and update operation against this table in the H2 database. Okay, I hope with this I think you got a clarity on what we are going to develop. Without wasting much time, let's get into the actual development. First thing is we need to have a Spring Boot application. For that, I am navigating to the Spring Initializer where I can create an application. The project is going to be Maven and language is Java, and I'm going with Spring Boot version 2.7.0. Group ID would be Shiva Prasad, and artifact is nothing but the project name. This is going to be Spring Boot CRUD demo, and I'm going with the Java version 11. And we need to have few dependencies in order to develop this particular backend application. The first is Spring Web, because it will help us to develop the REST APIs. The second is H2, and it is going to create a database for us. And finally JPA, which help us to perform the all DB operations. Okay, we are good with these dependencies. Just click on the generate. Open the folder where this downloaded zip exists. Yeah, just extract it. I'm using IntelliJ as an ID. Here click on the open and try to open our project here. Yeah, This will take bit time to resolve all the map and dependencies and import the Maven projects. Please be patient for some time. Yeah, we are done with this. The first thing, we have to configure the DB details. For that, navigate to the source main resources and try to find the application.properties. Here you need to paste these four configurations. The first is URL, which describes the URL of database, and this employees is nothing but the database name, and then username, password, and Spring Boot H2 console enabled true. This will help us to view the database in our browser by visiting a URL that I will show you. We are done with this one. Just go ahead inside our main package, and I'm going to create the few sub packages here. One is model, which is going to hold our entity, and second is controller, which is going to deal with our request. Third is repository, which is help us to perform the DB operations, and final one is service, which is going to hold our backend logic data. Backend logic, I mean to say. Inside the model, just create a class called employee. The first thing is we have to annotate this with the entity to let the JPA know this class can be mapped to a database table. Okay, I'm going to create the four properties which I discussed in the slide. Private integer ID. Let's give a good naming. Employee ID. Private string EMP name. Private string EMP address. Private double EMP salary. And for every table we know we need to have a primary key. So I am annotating this employee ID with @id so that it can be used as a primary key, and the value is going to be generated value of strategy type auto. Let's create a getters and setters followed by the constructor. Create constructor first. Great. Let's create the getters and setters, and here you can actually use the lombok, and you can simply do data annotation and noargs constructor and alux constructor, which will reduce your code, uh, but I am going with this way. Okay, we are done with this employee one. Now let's create our repository, and it is going to be an interface. The name would be employee repository, and which is going to extend the JPA repository. And here we need to specify what is the model and its primary key. If we take our model, that is employee, and the primary key would be integer, right? That is nothing but employee ID. Since this is an repository, just annotate with @repository. Yeah, we are done with this. So this JPA repository internally extends paging sorting paging and sorting repository, and which internally extends CRUD repository, and this particular repository will help us with the default basic operations such as find by id and save, that kind of operations we can get. and we are done with this one also. Now go to controller, create a class called employee controller. This will help us to deal with the front end request or API request. Just annotate with the REST controller so that Spring can know the purpose of this particular class. And then service. Service is going to be employee service. And annotate this with @service to let Spring know the purpose of this particular class. And here this class we use to deal with our backend logic. Okay, now let's come one by one. We are pretty much done with our model. Okay, we no need to worry now here. And the repository, we are done with creating a repository also, where we declared our employee and integer as a primary key. We are good with this one also. Now come to the controller. Okay, in controller we know like we are going to create 4 APIs, right? The first is going to be post mapping, and post mapping the URL would be something like create employee. Okay, and public, I'm going to return the created employee. Okay, so that's why I'm using public employee. Just import it, create employee. Okay, since I need to create an employee, so I'm going to send some data via the HTTP body, right? In order to accommodate the data to, I mean, in order to transfer that HTTP request body data to a domain object, we need to have the request body. Okay, this annotation will help us to map our JSON request to the what I can say Java object, that is nothing but performing the deserialization. Okay, request body, it is going to be employee. Great. And I will come to the logic, and then we are going to have the get mapping, where we can name something like get employee, and we are going to take an input as an ID. So based on the ID we are going to return the employee details. Okay, and as usual it is going to return the employee, so I'm going to have the return type as employee, get employee. Since we are taking one variable via path, so we need to annotate this with path variable and integer ID. Great. And I will come to the logic part again. And then we are going to perform the put operation, that is nothing but updating the existing employee. For that, it is going to be update employee, and we are going to take ID as well as the updating values, right? So based on the employee ID we are going to perform its update operations, right? Without having employee ID, how you can identify whether that employees exist or it's not? For that we are going to take this ID from the URL path. Okay, and I'm going to return the employee here also, update employee. And here one more catch, we have to send the employee object, right? I mean to say employee data in the form of JSON. So for that we need to have this @request body also, employee, and then we are going to have this ID in the URL path, right? For that we need to have this path variable. Okay, great. And I will come to the logic again. And finally, delete mapping. Okay, delete mapping is nothing but delete employee. Great. And we are going to take an ID, and based on the ID we are going to perform the delete operation. For this I'm going to return nothing, so it will be public void, and the method name would be delete employee. And I'm going to take a path variable here also, since I'm sending it via URL. Yeah, we are pretty much done with these ones, right? Now let's focus on our major logic part. Okay, inside the service, okay, I created already one employee service, right? Here we can have our backend logic. Okay, first is we need to auto wire our repository here. okay, employee repository, because this is going to perform all our DB operations. Yeah, employee repository, employee. Okay, the first method is going to be public employee create employee, and which is going to take an employee as an input, right? What we need to do here, just return employee repository dot, there is a method called save which will take an entity. Okay, you can see here this save is going to take an entity and it is going to perform the insertion operation against our H2 database. Okay, and just use the save method and pass your employee object. That's it, you are done with create employee. And then public employee get employee, and this is going to take an integer id, right? For that you need to find whether the employees exist or it's not. First perform the find by id. So employee emp is equals to employee repository dot, you can find a method called find by id. You can see here this is going to take an integer id and which will perform the select operation against the db, and if it finds, it will return that complete record, otherwise it will return null. Okay, find by id if it is present id, or else if it is not present, just return me null. Okay, that's all. If you can simply return this emp also here, not an issue. Yeah, we are done with this get also. What is the next one? Next one is going to be put operations, right? That is nothing but update employee. As we saw, it is going to take an employee object followed by an id, right? An ID. What is our first step? First is we have to check whether this id related employee exists or else not. Further, just perform the same operation. Okay, here. Now if my employee is null, then how I can perform the update operation here? I cannot perform, right? Further, just return null. You cannot do anything else. What you can do, you can simply do emp dot set employee name, okay, to the retrieved. This emp is going to hold the retrieved one, right? Here we are performing the employee repository dot find by id. So for that, perform the operation. So how you can do? Set using setter, right? That's why in the model we created the setters. emp dot set name is going to be employee dot get name, whatever we are passing from our request. Okay, then emp dot set address is going to be employee dot get employee address, and then emp dot set salary is going to be employee dot get salary, and this id remains the same. Okay, because this is a primary key and it is very bad to touch the primary key. Okay, this is going to be remains. Once we are done with this, okay, then we got a updated data here. Just perform the same operation which you perform here. Okay, in the create, just return employee repository dot save of employee. Okay, that's all. This is all about the update. Then final thing is public void delete employee. Okay, this is going to take an integer, right? Here what you need to do, just return employee repository dot, do we have delete? Yes, you can see here we have delete, but you can observe here there are different kinds of method here. Delete which will take employee entity, okay, as a parameter, and then you have delete by id, okay, where you can delete based upon the id also. So you can here do one thing, you can first try to perform the find by id and get the employee object and pass that to the delete, or else you can simply pass the id to this delete by id. That's all. Okay, and why it is throwing error? Statement extract side effects. Return type cannot be. Yes, this delete is not going to return anything to us. Yeah, we are pretty much done with all our basic operations here, and now come to the actual one. Okay, here the first thing is we have to annotate, I mean to say auto wire our service. Okay, auto wire private employee service. Okay, and start calling those methods. Employee service dot, we can see create employee which we created there, and just pass our employee. Okay, and this is going to return a employee object. Just do a return. Okay, and get also just return employee service dot get employee of id. Okay, and update also simply return employee service dot update update employee, where you need to pass the employee followed by the id which we are going to retrieve in the url path. And finally delete, simply employee service dot delete employee, just pass that one. Yeah, we are done with our application here. So we have now different kinds of apis which will perform the basic CRUD operations, and this particular video describes only the basic operations of the CRUD. Okay, basic CRUD operations, and I'm not going very in depth of each individual validations everything. I will create a new video where I will explain how we can do the validations and how we can what I can say optimize this code in a better manner. Okay, for now let's start the application and see whether it's working fine or else not. Go to here and run this main. Yeah, meanwhile let me open the postman. Please allow some time. This will take a moment to start the application since it is a first time build. Here Apache Tomcat got started and H2 also available. Yeah, you can see here our application got started in 36.92 seconds. Okay, yeah, so first is we have to see whether there is a database called employees or it's not, right? For that, navigate to the http colon localhost colon 8080 slash h2 hyphen console. This is a url. If you go to this url, it will take you to this login page where you need to give the username and password. Great, yes, you can see here it has a employee as a database, and you can see there is a table called type employee also. If you run this, and you can see there is nothing at this point of time. Now let's perform the simple operations. First is let's create a new employee, I mean to say http colon localhost slash 8080 slash create employee, right? Under the body, go select raw and then json. Here we need to pass EMP name. First is it's going to be Shiva Prasad, and then EMP salary, it is going to be 25,000, and then EMP address, it is going to be India. Just click on send, and you can see the status is 200 and it returns me an object, right? Let's cross verify in the table whether this got created or else not. I'm just triggering the select. You can see employee ID 1, address, Shiva Prasad, and salary. Okay, let's perform one more operation where I'm going to give employee name Prasad and salary would be 15,000 and address would be USA. Hit, and you can see you can observe here that employee ID getting incremented, right? Previously it was 1 and now it was 2, and this is going to be our primary key throughout this table. Okay, let's perform another select operation, and you can see here 2 records got inserted. Yes, we are done with performing our post operation, that is nothing but create an employee. Okay, now let's perform the get operation. HTTP colon localhost get employee. Yeah, I am passing 1. Okay, that means it should return India Shiva Prasad 25,000, right? Let's see. Internal server error. Let's see what happened. No default constructor. Yes, we are going to perform this retrieve operation, right? So it's always better to have a different default constructor here, otherwise you will end up going to have exceptions like this. Okay, I created a default one and then I'm rebuilding this one. Yeah, it got done. First let's cross verify whether we have data in table or else not. Yes, we have still, and then now perform this one. Still it is. Yeah, maybe we need to restart the complete application here. When we do a restart operation, that means when we are stopping the application and when we are starting the application, your H2 data will be erased. Okay, you need to perform this post operation again to insert the data. H2 means it's an in-memory database. Okay, and the lifespan of that will be till your application runs. Yeah, great, our application got started. And if you see here, when you try to perform this one, and you can see it redirected us to again the login page. Okay, and we logged in, and I'm going to the employee and I'm performing the select, and you can see there is no data. Okay, for this let's perform the first create employee one. Okay, one is got created, and then I'm going to have another thing. Okay, insert. Yeah, 2 records got inserted. Now we can cross verify. Yes, the data got inserted. Now perform the get operation this time. Yeah, I'm passing 1. and you can see here it retrieved Prasad USA 15,000, and you can see employee ID 1 is Prasad 1. If I pass 2 here, and it will retrieve the Shiva's data. Yeah, we are done with this get operation also. Now we have only two things: put, for that update employee 1. Yeah, I am updating this employee ID 1 record. My goal is like update USA to some Germany, and Prasad to some Gurram, and 15,000 to some 30,000. Okay, for that I need to pass this object employee name. It's going to be Gurram, and employee address is going to be Germany, and then employee salary is going to be some 30,000. Okay, and I'm passing here, you can see 1. Now perform this operation, and you can see it returned one object and status is 200. And let's go to the database and see whether it got updated or else not. Crazy, yes, it got updated. Germany, Gurram, and 30,000. This is all about the update. And final is delete. Delete also same, and this is the URL, and you can pass the employee ID here, and which is going to be deleted. Okay, and passing 1, that means this first records which we recently updated needs to be deleted, and hit the send, and you can see the status is 200. Okay, and we are not returned some anything from the method, that's why you are not seeing anything here. But you can go to the database and you can check here, and you can see that particular record got deleted. And that's all about this video, and I hope you learned something new today. Please do subscribe and share